morning, sir. Good morning, classmates. So we are Group 4, Module 4, entitled The Conceptual Framework of Social Problems. Now let's proceed to the objectives. So the first one is to understand the conceptual framework of social problems. Second, define the terminologies used in social problems. And lastly, known and distinguish social deviant behaviors in social problems. So now let's proceed and define the social problems. So the social problems, also called as social issues or social ill. So when we talk social issues po, it is a problem that affects many people within a society. It is a group of common problems in present-day society and ones that many people strive to solve. So by defining social ills naman po, ito po ay societal problems that have the propensity to take a society backward. Next, so the social problems refers to an issues that influences and is opposed by a considerable number of individuals within a society. So para po maintindihan po lalo yung social problems, so in the next slides po, we talk about the current social problems in the society. So, ang mga current social problems po, first is juvenile delinquency, second, drug addiction, third, sex problems, and lastly, poverty.
Good day, everyone. I'm Vernaline Eliazar, and I'm the one who will be discussing the juvenile delinquency and drug addiction. First, I will discuss the juvenile delinquency. Juvenile delinquency is the participation by a minor child, usually between the age of 10 and 17 years old, in illegal behavior or activities, and it also refers to children who exhibit a persistent behavior of disobedience. In short, those children between age of 10 and 17 years old who have committed a criminal act are called juvenile delinquents. Juvenile delinquency is also known as juvenile offenders, and each state has a separate legal system in place to deal with juveniles who break the law. There are two main types of offenders. The first one is repeated offenders, who also known as life course persistent offenders. Those are the children or child who continue to engage in criminal activities and aggressive behavior. Example nito is yung mga bata or mga binata na nasa taong mga 16, 17, 15 na nagkaroon ng kaso na inulit-ulit nila gawin yung crime na yun. Like for example is nakasuhan siya ng rape, tapos pagkatapos nun inulit niya ulit yung crime na yun. Number 2 is age-specific offenders. Is a type of juvenile delinquent behavior begins during adolescence and it ends before the minor becomes an adult. For example nito is yung mga underage drinkers. Karamihan sa ngayon is nangyayari to. Yun yung mga bata or binata na under 18 years old, which is yung mga 17 years old, 16 years old, ganyan, umiinom na sila ng alak. Next, drug addiction. State of periodic and chronic intoxication detrimental to the individual and society, produced by repeated intake of habit-forming drugs. Drug addiction is also called substance use disorders, and it is disease that affects a person's mentality and behavior that leads to an ability to control the use of illegal drugs or medication. Example of drugs and substances that causes addiction are marijuana, alcohol, and nicotine. Bakit nga ba yung mga addict hindi na nila maiwasang gumamit ng drugs or mga alcoholic? Drugs and alcohol cause dopamine to surge in brain's reward. In prefrontal regions, these areas control pleasure, decision-making, judgment, and self-control. That's why addicts feel pleasure and lose self-control when they drink or uses drugs. When drugs or alcohol are used repeatedly, it causes the brain to stop functioning normally, and the effect of dopamine becomes almost non-existent. So, the way to feel pleasure is by taking more drugs or alcohol. Once we become addicted to drugs or alcohol, we lose self-control, judgments, decision-making, and no longer feel pleasure. Like chronic disease, addiction can be cured, but with proper treatment, it can be successfully managed so people can have a healthy, quality life.
Sex problems. Different kind of sex problems. Increased student pregnancy, extramarital relations, and sexual intercourse between people related by blood or marriage. Wife swapping, homosexual, sexual feeling for the same sex. Nymphomania, uncontrollable sexual desire. Prostitution, sale of sex for money. So, dito sa increased student pregnancy, marami talagang maagang nabubuntis habang nag-aaral pa dahil nga nakikipag-contact na sila sa kanilang mga boyfriend or girlfriend. So, yan yung isang sex problems na nangyayari sa atin ngayon na dapat iwasan natin. Iwasan natin maagang mabuntis dahil nga nag-aaral pa lang tayo. So, here, in the extramarital relations, extramarital sex occurs when a married person engage in sexual activity with someone other than their spouse. The term may be applied to the situation of a single person having sex with a married person. Prostitution, sale of sex for money. So marami na nga dito kababaihan ang ginagamit ang kanilang katawan para magkaroon ng pera. So, yun na nga, binibenta nila yung katawan nila, nakikipag-contact sila kung kani-kaninong lalaki para lang sa pera. So, yun yung isa pang sex problems na nangyayari dito sa atin ngayon. At alam ko na marami na talagang kumakalat ngayon na ganun, like yung babae, kailangan ng pera, then yun yung naiisip nilang solusyon. Yun yung ginagawa nila, which is hindi maganda. Hindi magandang tignan at hindi talaga maganda yung ginagawang ganun. Poverty is the state or condition of having no money to buy goods and to provide services to satisfy one's basic needs. Poverty has become a big problem of the world. Efforts are being made across the world today to remove poverty. But the problem is that it does not take the name of ending. This problem affects a human's economic. Poverty affects the life of a poor family. A poor person is not able to take proper food and nutrition, and his capacity to work reduces. Reduced capacity to work further reduce his income, making him poorer. Children from poor family never get proper schooling and proper nutrition. They have to do work to support their family, and his destroys their childhood. They have to work to support their family, and this destroys their childhood. Some of them may also involve in crimes like theft and murder. Yun po, dumadami na po ang naghihirap or dumadami na po ang mga tao na nagkakaroon ng kahirapan sa buhay like financial problem. Hindi na po nila nabibili yung mga needs talaga nila like food and damit and wala silang maayos na tirahan and yung iba hindi na nakakapag-aral. So, marami na pong ganun ngayon at sobrang naghihirap na po ang ibang tao ngayon.
Proceed to the next slide. The deviant behavior. This refers behavior that violates the social norms and values by most people in particular culture or social settings. When we say deviant behavior, this is a peer-reviewed academic journal which focuses on social deviance, including criminal, sexual, and narcotic behaviors. Failure of religious and moral values is the main causes of deviant behavior. Sanction and norms. Sanctions are applied by society to reinforce social norms, can be formal or informal. With formal sanction, ridicule or ostracism can realign a straying individual towards norms. Informal sanction may include shame, ridicule, sarcasm, criticism, and disapproval. Groups, organizations in society of various kinds can promulgate rules that act as formal sanction to reward or punish behavior. For example, government and organization use law enforcement mechanism and often formal sanctions such as fire and imprisonment to maintain control and regulate their subjects. Authoritarian organization and government use severe sanctions such as censorship and expulsion and limits of political freedom. Laws are norms defined and enforced by government, and norms are social expectations that guide human behavior. The next is a crime. Crimes are acts that breaks laws. This is also a violation of official and written criminal law. For the next slide, as you can see, there are the examples of deviant behavior. These include the following: murder, stealing, prostitution, drug abuse, suicidal tendencies, and rebellions. However, the people at risk of this developing deviant behavior are the street kids, students, and the government official.
What is deviant behavior? Deviance is any behavior that is not considered normal. Who defines what is normal? Each society defines it differently, and the definition can change over time. Who are the deviants in our society? To some extent, we all are. How does deviance impact society? It can bring change. In this course, you will explore the theories of deviance and begin to recognize the impact on your personal and professional experiences.
So in the conclusion, a society can successfully end social issues or problems if they become adamant. These social issues or problems act as a barrier to the progress of society. Thus, we must all become together to fight against them and put them an end for greater good. So in the deviance is a behavior that violates social norms and arouses negative social reaction. Crime is behavior that is considered so serious that it violates formal law prohibiting such behavior. Social control refers to way in which a society tries to prevent and sanction behavior that violates norms.